This show, every single week, it feels like 2 minutes. It honestly does. Even though I wouldn't say this is my favorite episode of the season, it was damn hilarious. I enjoyed every minute of it. There was something about this episode in particular that it honestly felt like 3 minutes. And I know people have been saying that about Isekai Quartet ever since it started out. But like I've mentioned in my reviews, the past couple of episodes felt tightly paced and it felt like it's all it needed. But after leaving this episode, I just wanted this test to continue for another 5 minutes. It was a blast and a joy to see characters I didn't know I want to see take such a basic exam, a little test, a little gimmick in their school setting, and to see how cheating would occur while also playing into mechanics to these wonderful series. You literally have Aqua. When time is stopped because of Ainz, and because she's a goddess, she's not affected by the time alteration. Out of everyone in this classroom that she wants to cheat off of, she goes to Cosma. And Cosma is not an idiot. He's not the genius of the school, but he is a pretty decently smart guy. He's not an idiot by any rights of the definition, but out of all the characters in this classroom, she goes to him. Sure, she puts pencils and things up his nose, but still, that is such an Aqua move, and it just is like you want to slam your head into a desk, but thank her all in the process. And I loved what they did with that whole mechanic and how which characters were able to not be affected. I thought, like, once again, just really shows how much they care about the source materials in question, because things like that wouldn't happen unless you actually understood them at a deep enough level. Sure, maybe you would be able to get by like once or twice with a situation like this if you only knew the bare minimum, but the little details in this show make it all worth it. Like that moment where you have our boy Subaru just kind of chilling and studying, and he says, oh, this kind of reminds me of that one time. And then he's like, wait, how long have we been in school? Pretty much hinting at return by death, saying he probably has experienced it at some point in time during his run here. Like, those are the little moments that just feel so sweet. I mean, when you see Ainz just, like, get challenged by Aqua, of all characters, arguably one of the stupidest characters, or at least the most clueless character in the show, and how, because he didn't even finish school when he was in his original world, but because he's the supreme ruler Ainz, you know, he can't back down, and this is a girl who just doesn't know when to call it quits. The fact that his supporters are all like, of course, you know, he's gonna ace this test, and the boy tries to cheat, yet we have obviously a goddess who's not going to be affected by level 11 time alteration magic. Tanya, because she was basically brought in and interacted with being X in a kind of like stop time frame, she becomes immune, and because Subaru is returned by death, which is basically time in itself, he too is not altered. And just watching that scene play out where either people are oblivious that time was stopped, angry that you're going to cheat in front of me during the time stopping, and then you got just Ainz being like, let's just rewind and pretend this never happened. And of like all the situations that could probably break Ainz and Tanya's basically like little friendship that they've built, it would have been that moment. Because imagine if Tanya would have been like, wait, you did this? You were being X all along, you dirty bastard. Like, there's just, it writes itself, and that's what makes it so damn hilarious. Like, seriously, I don't think there is any activity in this school, or just general school settings, that you couldn't make interesting with this cast of characters. Literally, our characters worrying for a test was some of the funniest content you're gonna watch this season. And, like, that is something that says a hell of a lot about how great the source materials are, that they just naturally lend themselves to absurdity, many of which, you know, have experienced some pretty harsh and cruel environments, so it is just refreshing to see them in this situation, but basically having Konosuba comedy applied to them, it just continues to blow me away. And I would say at this point in time, I think I've come to accept, you know, I've been saying for a while that Shield Hero probably will just come in time. I think he is just a little bystander. He's going to pop up maybe every so often, but I don't think he's going to have an important role. I think at this point, the fact that they ended up going to his classroom and he wasn't even there, I think it was just something as more of a marketing, and I think fans, myself included, hyped him up more than he was actually going to be in it. And that's going to be true by the end. It's going to be disappointing, but hey, at the very least, the content that we're still getting feels just as good, if not better, than Season 1. So on one hand, I'm like, damn it, are they really not going to use him to his full potential? But on the other hand, I'm thinking, you know what, the cast we have is still pretty fantastic, so I can't rant too much, but I'll give myself time to see what they're going to do with him nonetheless. This episode was so wholesome, it was so great, and I think in terms of like really diving into the deeper mechanics of the series in question, I would probably say this episode did it in some of the best that we've seen with this anime to date. I mean, just seeing like which characters should be able to be immune to Ainz's magic, I think they really did their due diligence. I think this makes sense if you were to ask fans of all 4 source materials what characters should have some, like, basically immunity to this ability. I think they picked the right characters. It makes sense for their source materials while also just being goddamn funny in process, because you get these situations of arguing and bickering, and when you see the test answers and how Ainz just, he did it. And just, I love that. It is so basic. It is so simple, but I love that. I really do appreciate how they don't have to go even crazy in this show. Of course, the last 2 episodes, they weren't anything overly complex, but in terms of what they were doing, stealing and then obviously detention, there was a bit more to it than just sitting in a classroom and basically getting thrown into the hall once time kind of resumes and you realize you're the only dumbass standing up while everyone else is basically doing their homework, their tests, and not misbehaving. I love that. It is such a simple concept, but I mean, literally, I think I could have an episode of these characters just wiping down the chalkboards, right? You know, this is like their next punishment. Aqua, she has to like write her name 1,000 times like Bart Simpson, and then she just has to erase it, start again. Like, that could be an episode. And it would probably be damn funny because you'd have characters like Cosmo pop up and torment her, or there'd be magic kind of lingering in the background and make her life hell. Like, there's pretty much an endless sea of possibilities for one of the most basic settings that you can have in the anime medium, and that's pretty damn fantastic, I have to say. Like, this show, it just knows how to be funny. I mean, this was one of the most refreshing episodes. I thought a test was going to be fun. I thought it was going to find its ways to make me laugh, but literally having Ainz just do something I was not expecting, but once he did it, I was like, that totally makes sense. And for whatever reason, I was just oblivious that he was going to cheat and it would be fine. And then when I saw Aqua, I was like, okay, where are they going to take this? And I love how Tanya, of all characters, was just like, Army Commander, did you think you're going to get away with this in front of me? Sit your ass down, soldiers. Like, it's so good. The fact that Subaru was just completely oblivious that time was stopped for a good minute there, like, that is exactly how these characters should act. And I think at this point, it's probably safe to say, the creators of this show, I feel like the 2 source materials that they love the most, or at least have the most passion in adapting and doing interesting things with, I feel like it's probably Konosuba and Overlord. Like, the entire comedy formula is basically Konosuba just applied to all of these series. It really is, and that's not a bad thing in my honest opinion. But the amount of times Ainz or just his mechanics or his party are just kind of the center of attention, it feels like those 2 are kind of like what drive the series forward, with the ReZero as well as Saga of Time the Evil being a nice addition but not the dominating force, generally. I mean, you can just look at this episode in particular. Sure, there was some ReZero content, sure there was some Saga of Time of the Evil, but the episode was driven by, once again, an Overlord mechanic and the Konosuba comedy style. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I feel like those are probably the 2 most interesting for, like, mechanics and storytelling templates, but there is a lot of possibility for more ReZero stuff, especially with things like Return by Death, and Saga of Time of the Evil is just it has such possibilities with Being X. They actually introduce Being X into the show and things like that. So they definitely have their possibilities, and they never feel like just placeholders like maybe the Shield Hero does in this show right now. But I do like when you really break down how the show's been functioning, it really does feel like Overlord, Konosuba, they really have been the main focus. And even though out of the 4, Overlord may not be my favorite, I still enjoy Overlord, it doesn't feel like that's a bad thing in the slightest. I feel like they're making the perfect formula and not making it feel just like the same thing we've seen time and time again, and I'm appreciating that. I mean, this was a fun episode. It definitely made me feel like I wish we had 15 minutes. This was the first time since the first episode of this season that I was like, oh man, I wish we didn't have the opening or ending, just give me more content. But you know, even though I wish we had more, I still can't say I'm disappointed in this episode, because the minutes we had felt fulfilling, and it's not like we necessarily needed anything else in this episode, but it was just so good that it left you wanting more. And that's something that I think has been a very big positive in this show, is that it does run half-length episodes. Like, by the time season 2 wraps up, we will essentially have a normal season's worth of content if you take into consideration how long most episodes in a 12-episode anime season are. Yet it feels like the shorter runtime, it leaves us always craving more rather than feeling like they kind of left it too long. I honestly feel like if you were to combine 2 episodes at a time, while they would be enjoyable, I feel like depending on your mood, you might get more burnt out on the comedy as feeling like it's a little too basic or a little too formulaic, but having a nice 10-minute a little bite-sized piece every single week, and even if you binge it, it only takes a little bit of an hour or two from your day. So I like that. I like how even though I'm disappointed that I wanted like 15 minutes, I still appreciate the fact that it left me wanting more, rather than me feeling like, oh, okay, you probably could have trimmed a few minutes off that. I like that. I mean, it's just something about this show that is just damn good, and as always, I look forward to the next week's episode. Easily, like, the show I think I anticipate the most. It's not my favorite show this season, but it's one that I probably enjoy the most on a pure enjoyment level, and I always have a grin, and I laugh, and man, I hope to see more collaborations of powers and how characters avoid or interact with them, because this episode was a hoot, and there was definitely some charming moments where just characters' arms and just the visual presentation. It's not the most flashy because it's all like chibi designs and things like that, so most of it doesn't change all that much besides like a facial expression. But seeing characters like Aqua just kind of like swinging her arms and just the little adorable little tweaks that they do, winks and a nudge like how Kazuma steals panties and things like that. Just the little things that make an episode so damn memorable, and I can't wait to see where they're going to take it next week. But what did everyone think of Isekai Quartet Season 2 Episode 4, favorite moment, and what did you think of that little collaboration of Ainz' power? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like and remember to hit that subscribe button if you happen to be new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.